Are you ready? Let me just set that. Yes.
We'll go ahead and call the Mountain Line Board meeting for April 15th, 2026 to order. We'll go ahead and start with roll call.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. City of Flagstaff, Lori Matthews is excused. We have her alternate, David Stentz.
Here.
Thank you. Coconino County, Geronimo Vasquez is expected. City of Flagstaff, Brian Sweet here. Thank you. NAU, Josh Mayer.
Here.
Thank you. CCC, Tony Williams.
Here.
Thank you. We have online our attorney, Scott Holcomb.
Good morning.
We have staff here in the room and on Zoom. We also have some guests with us today from the Free Mountain Line group. And I'm just gonna read off their names for. Sure. Okay. Sydney Ritterhouse. Nico Gooden, Anthony Chiapetta, Taylor Franklin, Camille Spiro, Lucia Curtis, Emma Mitchell, Jacob Janikowski, Bianca Daniels, and Evan Yeager. And some of them will want to speak during the call.
Thank you. On to our safety minute. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Today's safety minute is on bicycle awareness. So with warmer weather and longer daylight hours, we're seeing a noticeable increase in bicycle activity throughout our service area. Not only bicycles, but scooter riders and other things that people ride in their recreational time. This seasonal shift introduces added risk for our operators and public. Bicyclists can be less predictable than other vehicles, riding in and out of traffic, approaching quickly from behind, or operating in blind spots. Bus operators and all drivers should take care when approaching intersections, making right turns, and pulling to or from bus stops or entranceways. Maintaining safe passing distance, checking mirrors frequently, and anticipating cyclist behavior are critical to preventing serious incidents. Staff continue to reinforce defensive driving practices and awareness of vulnerable road users as part of our ongoing safety efforts, aligns with the Federal Transit Administration safety priorities. Protecting our most vulnerable road users is a shared responsibility and a key part of safe and transit organization. Thank you and welcome to the board meeting.
Thank you, Sam. Now on down to call the public. Public is invited to speak on any item or any area of concern that is in the jurisdiction of Mountain Line Board. Just a reminder that the board is prohibited by open meeting law from discussing, considering, or acting on items raised during the open call of public. And individuals are limited to a 3-minute presentation. Our first member of the public.
Okay, let's go with Lucia Curtis. Perfect.
Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Lucia Curtis and I think we should go guests to the Mountain Line Board meeting today. For many people in Flagstaff, transportation is just about convenience, it's about opportunity. When someone can't afford a bus pass, they may have to turn down the job, miss class, or face significant barriers in accessing essential resources such as grocery and healthcare services. Making public transit free removes that barrier. It means a student can get to campus, a worker can pick up an extra shift, and a family can move through the city without added financial stress. It also means fewer cars on the road, less traffic, and a cleaner environment for us all. This is a real chance for Flagstaff to lead by example as a sustainable, connected community. This decision reflects your mission, getting you where you want to go, and it ensures that everyone in our community has that opportunity. I truly feel this is a step forward for our city. With this in mind, I believe you, me, and the community should work together to make Mountain Line free by August of 2027. Thank you.
You.
And Emma Mitchell.
Hello, my name is Emma, and I believe that you all should vote yes to make the mountain line free in May. I believe that the mountain line bus should be free because everyone deserves to be able to travel to the entirety of Flagstaff. Free mountain line will bring more people to the further reaches of our city that are not as easy to get to. It will help businesses that don't typically see much traffic, and it will help people appreciate more of our beautiful city. With this in mind, I believe you, me, and the community should work together to make Mountain Line free by August of 2027.
Okay, Jacob Janikowski.
Board members, audience members, employees, and everyone else, thank you for having us here at the meeting. My name is Jake Danikowski, and I believe you should vote yes to the mountain line being fare-free in May. I think a fare-free bus system in our city would have numerous benefits, including but not limited to the improvements in our air quality, cutbacks on emissions, less cars and roads, and economic benefits with promotion of citizens and tourists traveling throughout the city of Flagstaff, not just in downtown. With this in mind, I believe you, me, and the community should work together to make Mountain Line free by August 27th.
Evan Yeager.
My name is Evan, and I believe you should vote yes to Mountain Line being free in May. A fare-free Mountain Line would heavily benefit not only students and those who need reliable transportation, but also the entire Flagstaff community. Flagstaff overall economy will benefit as students, parents, and residents will be able to, and be more likely to, get to the east side of Flagstaff where the mall, theater reside, but also small businesses that rely on visits of new community members to stay open. Not only to mention how much downtown will benefit as the tent is not free for all. The unsheltered community will also feel less burdened and have a chance to better their life this way. You cannot get a bus pass unless you have a steady source of income, and in a country where driving is the main way to get around, you need a reliable and accessible source of transportation to have a job. On that note, a free mountain line will cause single car ride share to go down, therefore not only improving the Flagstaff economy and community, but also the environment and the congested roads. If the goal of Mountain Line is to help people get to where they need to go, let's make that even easier for the community we love. We have witnessed other cities being successful at this. Flagstaff and Mountain Lines will be trailblazers and could even start a wide trend at this very hard time of our lives. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out. I humbly ask you to vote to move forward with the Mountain Line buses being free for all in May. With this in mind, I believe you, me, and the community should work together to make the Mountain Line free. Thank you.
Thank you. Bianca Daniels.
Hello, My name is Bianca Daniels, and I believe you should vote yes to make Mountain Line free in May. I'm graduating from NEU as an environmental sustainability studies major. So of course, reducing our emissions is very important to me. And there are so many other reasons and benefits to making Mountain Line air free for all Flagstaff. I also drive my car here, and that has been a strong motivator for me to advocate for a fair mountain line. Driving in Flagstaff feels really dangerous, and my sincere belief is making our buses fare free and encouraging more people to use it will benefit public health and safety. Higher ridership will mean less cars on our very small street. It'll reduce accidents. When I was rear-ended right here on Milton, bumper traffic earlier this year. It'll reduce close calls with pedestrians like I have experienced while walking. We can make everyone's experience, whether you're a resident, student, tourist, or visitor, smoother and safer by making Mountain Line fare free. Compared to so many other cities I've lived in, Flagstaff is already on its way to becoming a great city with a variety of viable transit options. Therefore, I believe you, me, and the community should work together to make Mountain Line free by August of 2027. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the help of the
Thank you so much. Thank you for all members of the public who spoke today.
Chair, can we recognize that Director Bessie is the meeting?
Yeah.
As well as Rick Teller from the city of Flagstaff. Thank you.
Well, so you both. Okay, on to item number 5, proposed minutes. We have 2 meeting minutes to approve. Regular meeting on March 18th and a special meeting on the 26th. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved. Looking for a second. Second. And seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 6, August 2026 service changes. Jackie Leonard.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. So this is an item to review the public comments that we received as part of the public comment period we voted for, for service changes in August of this year. To close that public comment period and then to vote on the proposed service changes. I want to super quickly just go through, you received in your packet, you did receive a summary of the comments that we received to date. When I had to run that, I do have 2 additional comments about one of the changes that I will share with you verbally. They came in after I had to run those comments. I want to go really quickly through the low-hanging fruit ones, which we did not receive any negative comments on, and we are recommending moving forward with as proposed. This includes the addition of 2 bus stops up on McMillan Mesa to better serve the that area near the Veterans Home and the nearest apartments on the McMillan Mesa on that eastbound side. Please stop me if you have questions on these service changes. We did go over them in the February meeting, so I'm going to kind of go quickly. With Route 3, it is moving as part of Prop 488, promised to the voters, moving Route 3 from 30-minute frequency to 20-minute frequency weekdays during peak hours. Route 5, it is adding a bus stop on near the Starwood Apartments on Highway 180. Pleased to say that we actually just yesterday got approval from ADOT for that bus stop, which is a huge hurdle. And as part of the city's first mile, last mile project in Mount Mine, a pedestrian crossing will be added in that area to make it easy to go back and forth there. Route 66, also taking that down to 20-minute service and then adding a bus stop near the Sacred Peaks Health Center. We cannot be right in front of it due to our current routing, but getting closer to that area. So those are all the easy ones, where we did not receive any constructive feedback. Moving on to Route 8, which is the one where I want to spend a little bit of time. So the proposal on Route 8, which is our teal route that goes out West Route 66,
was to extend the service changes that we did last summer and go further out into that neighborhood. So instead of using the roundabout to turn back around at Woody Mountain Road, we would continue out and make a full loop around the current area that is developed there, ending up out near the Public Works Building, City Public Works Building, and then going back out West Route 66. The proposal included the elimination of what we will call the Thompson Loop, which is the shown in black there, which is I'm not gonna call it the closure of 3 stops because one of them would be replaced by a stop that is adjacent to it nearly. One of them is served by another route. The other one would be a stop closure. So we did, as you saw in your in the comments that we provided, we did receive some feedback on this one, about the stop closures and how that would impact people. We did, of course, call back or email back everyone who did provide comments. I can say that some of them, through some education, could use other bus stops. It's a matter of retraining or using other routes. It's a matter of, using a different travel pattern than what you're used to. But there are certainly legitimate concerns about the removal of those bus stops. I'm going to share quickly 2 additional comments we received so you can understand everything that we receive as far as public comment goes. One is a voicemail, a gentleman who says, my father lives in the Boulder Point neighborhood and the loop on Route 8 is like the only way, sorry, it's the translation of the voicemail, is like the only way I can get close to him using the bus system. So I vehemently disagree with the change to Route 8. So if you could call me back, that'd be great, thank you, bye. Did call him back. I did confirm that the element that would impact his ability to get to his father's house, who does care for his child. And then one additional email that we received, I just want to leave feedback on the proposed change of closing off the part of Route 8. I like having that connection as I am an NAU student who uses both the 10 and the 8, enjoys having that easy connection. So those are the 2 that you did not have in your packet. Based on the feedback that we received, our operations team, since I have done my staff report, so this is breaking news since my staff report was completed. Our team went out to test the route and doing both loops. So could we, in the runtime for the route, because adding runtime means adding either lowering frequency or adding buses, which we do not currently have it in our budget to do. Could we, in the current runtime, accomplish both of those things? So the part in pink and the part in black. Heather has talked to you a lot about, I think, a little bit about the RAT pack, the route assessment team, which is a group of our more senior drivers who come together to advise and make sure that they are in the loop on all service change proposals. They have taken a bus out during our busy time of day. As we all know what our traffic patterns are like here in Flagstaff, and did several test runs of running both of those loops. And the feedback of our operators is that we can accomplish both of those loops within the runtime and while giving the operator downtime at the downtown connection center. Now, will there be a couple of runs a day where that is tight? We've all tried to make that left from West Route 66 onto Milton. Yes, that is a fact of life, no matter how that route is running. So as with most of our routes, there are going to be a couple of times during the day where it might run down. It might run behind because of that. So in addition, we are, as you all know, I believe we're in the middle of doing an operational assessment, looking at all of our routes, interconnectivity and everything. So we would really like to punt this to the operational assessment. So they can look at, our contractor can look at it holistically before making a change like this. So we are recommending, staff is recommending that we move forward with all of the proposed service changes, with an amendment to Route 8 to not eliminate the Thompson Loop and to include that in the route, based on our operator feedback and the public comment that we did receive. So that is, I want to keep things brief. That is my presentation on the proposed service changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good. Questions for staff?
So this is a two-parter. It is closing, we need to close the public comment period related to the service changes. And then if you agree with what I recommended, it would be an amendment to what I have there.
Okay. We'll take those in 2 separate parts. First, looking for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion, or any opposed? Motion carries. And the second part, to approve the recommended service changes for implementation in August 26th. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Are we
Motion
covered,
carries.
are we covered from doing like?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure we are all good that we are going to move forward with not eliminating Thompson Loop.
Yep.
Okay.
For your recommendation. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay. Okay, on to the review of internal controls, Heather.
Chair and members of the board. So I have a brief update on where we're at with addressing some of the internal control issues that we have discussed over the last full year. So a couple of internal control audits that we have performed and things that we have changed. In addition to the audit, fiscal year 2025 internal controls that were identified, which we're also going to walk through. Wanted to let you know, we have implemented the change for payroll reviews. We've changed our accounts payable, ensuring that the purchase orders are being tested and that they are receiving appropriate approval. And then improving our grant reimbursement and reporting. These efforts were already in place before the 2025 audit, but wanted to touch on them and then give you more clarity specific to those findings of the audit. Also have added a reoccurring budget to actual reporting meeting. So not just getting the report, but actually meeting to discuss that report. And then we have set meetings with our financial partners to go over those same reports. Megan and I did meet with the city of Flagstaff just yesterday. This week. We met with them this week. Sorry, my days are flat. We continue to audit and update internal controls in general. So Mountain Line has 3 sets of internal controls. We have payroll controls, we have AP controls, we have what we call other controls, and then we have our federal grant internal controls, which was included in your packet. Additionally, we have implemented a system of ensuring that records that belong to Mountain Line are stored in Mountain Line systems and on Mountain Line's devices. We did identify a series of records that were stored in a third-party software by our prior financial lead. We recovered a lot of those documents, but it taught us that we have users who were downloading third-party applications and allowing for syncing of Mountain Line owned documents into that. They were not being stored appropriately on our shared drive, so we're curing that problem. Our IT department is right now auditing computers, ensuring those are all disabled and removed. And then we're looking at blocking web access with a requirement that users have to go through a change management form to justify why they need to be able to access www.dropbox.com as well. More specifically, looking at the 2025 financial audit, I'm going to go through all of the pages that had findings. So on page 41 of the audit, there were several internal controls over accounting records and segregation of duties. The first one was regarding bank statements being reviewed and reconciled timely, and also include that it was being reviewed by authorized persons. We've already implemented a corrective control on that. We are reviewing bank reconciliations by the 10th of the month. I am getting those reconciliations and providing documentation back to finance, confirming that I reviewed. I have no questions, there are no discrepancies, and that's been added to our record retention. We are also going to go backwards to July 1 and ensure that we document why that piece of information that says the CEO reviewed these bank reconciliations is missing as corrective action for the prior 6 months in which that was not happening. There were several findings around software and software access. So I touched on this in the prior slide, but we're in the process of moving user management for our software solutions to our IT department. So we drafted an SOP And IT right now is very focused on the role, user management role for our financial and HR systems as the highest priority. We expect to have that converted over by the end of April. And then we're looking at what are the other ancillary items like our federal web portal and how do we handle user management for that. The third area of finding under records and segregation was related to journal entries. Megan, our finance director, had already started looking at what SOPs were not being followed, ensuring that we are following them and that we're documenting those review processes accordingly. And similar to the bank recs, we are going back, looking at what occurred between July 1 and January 1 when we started implementing these changes and documenting that for our anticipated 26 audit. There were several findings related to purchase orders and procurements. Mountain Line does have SOPs that are very clear on purchase orders. We have a procurement policy that's very clear on purchase orders, and it was not being observed or followed. The purchasing officer reports to and did report to our financial manager at the time. Megan has worked with our purchasing person to update our procedures and more importantly, training for our staff. And then identified ways that our accounting system is looking for that purchase order and notifying us when it does not exist so that we have workflow and checks and balances. Before, when we had QuickBooks, that was not possible. So again, our new financial management system, Sage, makes this possible. And we have implemented, and Megan, rightly so, has refused to authorize a few expenditures because purchase orders did not exist. And again, just teaching our team to go back to those required steps and procedures. Mountain Line does require a purchase order for every procurement that exceeds $10,000. The last under accounting records and segregation was about disbursements that were being made directly from our bank account. So our prior financial manager had allowed ACH access to several vendors. That was actually stopped right away, making sure that immediately. The problem with that is that then the invoices were not going through the proper process to be reviewed and approved as required. So that ended months ago in October. And we'll go back and just check, were there any ACH payments between July 1 and when we made that change that we need to document for the auditing purposes. But at this time, no one can pull money out of our bank account. If they want to deposit money, we do still allow that. Moving from segregation and oversight into financial reporting, there were several accruals, year-end accruals, that were noted as missing documentation or opposing entries is what I would call them. The finance director has reviewed and trained our financial team on those year-end entries. They are important to making our year-end statements. They are not money that was missing. They were not unauthorized expenditures. The top one, just as an example, is where we try and document how much of our payroll belonged to that year versus this year, which is a sound accounting practice, and it wasn't documented on both sides. So we're curing that with training and under our new finance director's leadership. The last one, the authority did not retain documentation to support $1.1 million of federal expenses. This is related to our grant. This is also related to the material weakness, which is on the next slide. Megan and I have worked diligently on this, and what we identified is that these were duplicate drawdowns. The prior employee was not maintaining documentation, and then he was double drawing. So we have already scheduled a meeting with the Federal Transit Administration to talk about how to pay them back and retain our good standing with FTA. Basically, this money is sitting in our bank account, so it's not missing money. We do have it, we've accounted for it, and now we're working on the process of paying FTA back. Specific to the internal control, all reimbursement requests now require the finance director and myself to go over them as well as the documentation. It has to be approved before the reimbursement request is made. That's always been our SOP. The prior leader was not following that procedure, and we did not have in place a system for me to know when drawdowns were made in violation of that SOP. We've cured that problem, so now I get notice, Megan goes in and takes $1 from our reimbursement system. I get notice that we've claimed $1. And then I'm able to say, you didn't show me documentation, it wasn't authorized, so checks and balances. So this is the exact same thing, but it was in the audit on a separate page, so I put it in here. The authority did not have adequate internal controls in place to ensure eligible expenses for the federal cluster. So this is just a repeat of what I just read to you. And like I mentioned, we are meeting with the Federal Transit Administration. We've given them documentation to show what dates each drawdown occurred from which grant numbers, so that we can cure this as soon as possible. We will notify you when that is cured. I did include in your packet the financial management policy as well as the federal grant internal controls. I'll continue to report back to you on the corrective actions that are not fully implemented. I want you to know when we have successfully implemented all of those, but I would always welcome your feedback on information that I'm not sharing that you would like to see, whether it's related to the audits or other items of discussion about financial oversight. That's all I have.
Do you have any questions for staff? Thank you.
Welcome.
Well done. Okay, on to item number 8. Megan.
Hey, good morning. I'm going to present on our FY 2027 operating budget. So our FY 2027 operating budget comes to a total of $16,819,613. This is an 18% increase over FY 2026, which was $14,196,114. 64% of this budget is due to our workforce budget of $1,071,097, which was presented on last month. Most of this increase is actually due to a $1,375,000 set aside for service expansion. And the other operating expense increase was only at $73,642, and I'll go into the details of what that makes up that number. The service expansion increase is just holding account, so throughout the year, as we identify the operating needs for those funds, we will perform budget adjustments into the actual operating line items. This could be professional services, wages, fuel, and other kind of operating needs that come up as a result of our service expansion project. Out of the $173,000 operating increase, we have $66,000 that are allocated to indirect overhead expenses. We have added $28,500 to human resources professional services. A large part of this is for consulting fees, but then another part of this is for increased operating costs for our payroll processor. We use a third-party payroll vendor to process our payroll, and as our staffing levels increase, we have just increased expenses for this contract because a large part of that contract is a per employee portion and then a per paycheck increment as well. So this is just increasing that. Even with this contract, it's still more cost effective to use a third party payroll vendor than to bring it in-house. So we don't anticipate any changes to that contract at this time. We have also increased our legal fee budget by $16,000. Our monthly retainer fee is increasing, and then we're also setting aside some funds for special project billing. We have added $20,000 for audit services. This expense is not increasing, but this is just truing up the budget to our actual contract amount, which hadn't been done in prior years. And then we also have another small increment of $1,500 for cybersecurity staff training. This is just in the annual the virtual training that all staff are required to complete to keep our systems safe. We've also added a $25,000 increment for banking fees. Now, this again is not increasing in prior years. We've just been reporting our revenue net of fees, which was not best practice. So this is just adding that budgetary line item to account for those fees. And so as we are recording our transactions in a year, we'll just see a higher increase in our revenue that will be offset by the banking fees, but the net impact is 0. We're also adding another $57,000 to our vehicle maintenance budget. This is just for an increased reliance that we have on outside repair services as a result of our aging fleet. So this just gives us more capacity to handle those repairs and keep our buses on the road. We've added another $15,000 increment for printed materials. So that we can communicate service changes and have the capacity for new printed ride guides as a result of service changes. We have also added a small increment of $5,000 just for computer and phone supply increase. With a second location, we just have a greater variety of equipment. And so we just need this budget capacity to support those locations. And we have just a small increase of $5,600 for facility supplies, just for increased cost for maintenance and janitorial supplies. I will note that we are not making any changes to our liability insurance budget. We have been quoted a slight decrease to that expense, but the final contract values are still unknown. So once we have those contract amounts, we can adjust the budget accordingly. So that's what I have for the operating budget. I will be presenting on the capital budget next, but I think now's a good time to stop for any questions.
Questions?
Okay,
Right, on to the next.
all right, on to our capital budget. So for FY 2027, our capital budget is come to $34,211,709. The projects that we are budgeting are on this slide here. So it makes up the first mile, last mile project. This is 80% federally funded and is in partnership with the city of Flagstaff, who is providing the local match for that project. We have $3.7 million for the Downtown Connection Center Phase 2. Again, this is 80% federally funded, with the transit tax matching the providing the local match for that. The budget includes it's mostly made up of the Casper maintenance facility expense, $19,674,511. Again, 80% federally funded. We have about $5 million set aside for vehicle replacements and rehabilitation. This includes a purchase for 2 new buses, 2 bus rehabs, and then some funding set aside for additional vehicle rehab expenses, new transmissions, new engines, new paint, what have you, for our existing fleet. And we have also set aside $1.2 million for new bus stops, and this includes new and refurbished amenities for those stops. And then another $858,000 for planning studies, training, software, administrative projects. This is where the budget was for the Minda Vista workforce housing project, in addition to just other miscellaneous administrative projects. So this is not all new funding. This does include carryover from FY 2026. So the carryover amounts here. So the new funding that we were asking for is only $6,469,000 for this year. The rest is previously approved carryovers from FY 26 of $27,742,000. So the first column there is what had already been approved in FY 26 for those projects, including the first mile, last mile project, the TCC Phase 2, the Casper maintenance facility, and the vehicle replacements. That's for 2, specifically for 2 buses right there. And then the second column there to show the new funding that we have, another $1.5 million for the TCC, some additional funding for Casper. The vehicle rehabs is in that $1.75 million amount, and then the funding for the new bus stops and the administrative project. So that's all I got for capital. If we have any questions on the capital budget.
Questions regarding capital? All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. On to item number 10.
Good morning, I'm actually gonna talk about something that's not related to the 27 budget, so I just wanted to set the stage for that. In January, we came to you and asked for direction to pursue our federal grant for 2 expansion or replacement buses, making the attempt to apply for battery electric buses with that grant funding. We've been unsuccessful in doing that. Per the staff report, we recently were advised by the Federal Transit Administration on 2 separate events. That FTA is supportive of replacement expansion buses for standard propulsion types, which really which clearly to us identifies that battery electric and other zero emission vehicles will continue to be challenged in receiving grant support. So as a result of that, as mentioned in the staff report, we'd like to modify the grant application to pursue 2 additional hybrid electric buses. The hybrid electric buses have been supported, just like CNG, by the Federal Transit Administration for the last 20 years. So we don't anticipate that that will be an issue. And additionally, under the suspension of the procurement resolution, I'd also like approval to purchase 2 35-foot hybrid electric diesel buses from Gillig using the Washington State contract. And to be very clear, it's about 24 to 30 months before we incur that expense for those 2 buses. It is in our financial plan, it was not in the 2027 budget because we would actually incur that expense in 2029, oddly enough. But getting the approval of that order allows us to issue a letter of intent and get in line for that delivery. So I am seeking today permission to modify our grant application to hybrid electric and to move forward with the purchase of those hybrid electric buses. The one caveat that I will offer is I do need to meet with city staff and ensure that the language used in the passage of Prop 488 does not prevent us from buying additional hybrid electric buses. And that's everything that I had in the form of presentation today.
We're looking for a motion.
So moved as presented.
That's a lot to read. Looking for a second. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will follow up on the city's remarks as.
Okay, on to item number 11. And
Madam Chair, members of the board, and Donna, Capital Development Manager. I am seeking board approval to amend the contract 2024-130 pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure upgrades. That is basically the first mile, last mile project. To approve the guaranteed maximum price number 2 in amount not to exceed $2,784,858. Next slide, please, Brian.
Yes, I have a clicker.
Oh, good. I'm used to being online.
The middle big button.
Yes,
you click it,
oh, okay.
and then below that is to go back.
Still have a problem operating my TV remote as well. So just a little reminder on the scope of this GMP, what it will cover. This was part of a presentation given to the board in January about first mile, last mile. The scope of this construction under this GMP will construct 3 pedestrian crossings on Highway 180 located at Forest Avenue, Anderson kind of Whiting area adjacent to Star Point Apartments, and Mead Lane kind of adjacent to our bus stop up there and some of the commercial hotels and businesses up there. In addition, it will construct 5 pedestrian crossings on Solier Drive that runs adjacent with our Route 3, connected to a lot of apartments, residential in those areas there. For both, areas, once approved, Kinney Construction would, once we get our permits, would start construction on Highway 180 on May 22nd, approximately, and do everything they can to complete construction before school starts in early August. There could be a few little activities happening in later August. And then following that, they would work on Solier. So anticipating slide there, sorry, there it is. Essentially anticipating the substantial completion of all of this work by the end of November with final in early December of 2026. The GMP does include allowances, general conditions for the contractor, their management and other general requirements, contractor contingency, CMRP or profit, which is 5%, insurance, bonds, and tax. And apologies, I get the wrong. That. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the.
You were jumping ahead.
Am I going ahead? Okay, I need to go
I
back.
know,
So this
you were, small button on the bottom.
Okay, go
You were in the right direction.
Okay, just gotta go back. There it is. Okay. With that concludes my report, and if there are any questions, I am seeking a motion.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve. Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, on to item number 12, Sam Short.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Sam Short. I'm the workforce director for Mount Climate, and I'm here today to give an update on our FTA drug and alcohol program audit corrective action plan. So as you may remember, Mount Lion underwent audit of our drug and alcohol, FTA drug and alcohol testing program back in November 18th and 19th of this past year. This audit was conducted by the FTA Drug and Alcohol Program Compliance Division, and we received those results on December 19th of 2025. January 21st, the board did approve a corrective action plan, and that plan was to be completed by March 19th of this year. So some of the areas that were requiring correction by the FTA was the policy manual review. And one example of the policy manual review corrections that we did make was that we had to write in our policy that only a trained supervisor or company official could submit somebody for reasonable suspicion testing. So that's an example of policy manual review edits that we were required to make. Also, in the drug and alcohol program manager review, we were required to add a couple other items like we must add a minimum draw a quarterly random drug and alcohol test. And also that we were asked to make sure that we put in our policy, if we were contacted by the medical review officer to contact an employee, that we were required to do so within 24 hours and give 3 reasonable attempts. So that's an example of the drug and alcohol program manager review. For the records management reviews, we are required to make sure that NextCare gives us legible copies of the employer copy. We have worked diligently with them, and it's taken pretty much this entire 3 months to get them to send us the correct copies that are legible, but they did start recently sending us the correct copies. So that was another example of one thing that we were required to change. Last, I combined the two, the urine collector and also the breath alcohol technician reviews. So the FTA asked us to submit 7 separate policies to NextCare, and asked that all of their either breath alcohol technicians or urine collectors read, affirm that they understand the policy and agree to abide by the FTA policy. So I've given those 7 memorandums to NextCare 2 times within the last 3 months. And as you'll see here in a second, we have not received this back yet. So there were 3 corrective actions that we were not able to correct, because they were not, in our control. So one of those was to find a testing site that provides drug and alcohol testing for all service hours that Mountain Line provides. So essentially, we need to have somebody that will do a drug and alcohol test for us from 4 AM to roughly 11 PM. There is no one in Flagstaff or even on call within this area that provides that type of drug and alcohol testing. And it also, of course, required that it be FTA, DOT alcohol drug test. So we were not able to correct that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the NextCare documents that were given to them, we have not received them back yet. I did contact the auditor after submitting all of the items that we had corrected. I told them that we had given them the 7 letters and that they had still not returned them. And they agreed to help us and contact NextCare to get those letters signed and returned. But as of this morning, we have still not received those from NextCare. So those are the only items that we were not able to fix. One thing we are going to do to correct the hours of service testing is myself and our transit safety specialist, Danny Barbie, are going to become certified to do urine collection and breath alcohol technician. So that is one more correction we will be able to make, assuming we get the memorandums back from NextCare. Are there any questions? Yeah.
I just want to add a remark. So when you're a Federal Transit Administration grantee, you are required to have this program in place. And we are required to provide appropriate oversight. When you are in small rural America, there are challenges to these programs. And I appreciate Sam and Danny's volunteerism to become urine collectors and breath alcohol technicians. And there are lots of challenges around implementation of that once we are certified. One of the reasons that we have called on FTA to assist with documentation is NextCare is a DOT certified collector. And so this goes beyond what we've asked of them. This goes to that certification that they have in place. And so just wanted to clarify that that's why FTA has stepped in and said we will help. It's because really their lack of compliance with that request from us actually puts their certification as DOT testing sites at risk. The other thing I would tell you is you'll see we are very focused on NextCare. We have changed testing sites multiple times and have these same issues with each of these type of collection sites within the community. So I just thought I'd add that to what Sam shared.
They do provide drug and alcohol testing for other, whether it's DOT, Federal Motor Carrier, FTA providers. So they are required to maintain those standards. We used to go with Concentra. They limited their business hours Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The reason we moved to NextCare in the first place was that they offered a 7 AM to 8 PM service hours. But now those have diminished over the last 4 months to close to business hours again. So.
You have a question, Madam Chair? Sam, can you go back a slide? So this is kind of on the heels of what Heather was just sharing with us. We have insufficient testing during all service hours. So the training that you'll go through is going to help with that coverage. Is that the plan?
Yes, so Danny and myself will be able to come in whenever we want to and collect urine from anyone. We just have to make sure that we abide by the FTA regulations. Use the FTA documentation, and we can come in and pull or collect the urine or get the breath samples whenever we need to, whether it's 4 AM or 11 PM. And they don't require us to do as often, but at least so that people aren't expecting their drug test to only be between Monday, Friday, 8 and 5.
So is that? Does that help us meet the federal requirement?
It does.
Yes,
Because we don't have an agency that's able to do that. We're kind of stuck.
and we will pretty much cut out next year, speaking of us, get certified. Because we won't need to use them anymore.
If I may, I can raise my hand again. FTA requires 5 different kinds of tests. The timing, the service hours really falls into 2 categories of testing. Random, because as Sam said, we don't want staff to say, they're only gonna test us between 8 and 5, so I can drink until 3 AM or whatever it is, right? The other piece though is post-accident. So when we have an accident, we only have so much time to make collection or testing. And if that accident, and to be clear, our mechanics are included in this drug testing pool, so don't just think driver. And our mechanics start at 4 AM. If the mechanic is required to go for a reasonable suspicion or a post-accident in those early hours of the day, I only have so long to make that collection. And so those are the 2 things that we need to cure essentially with the service hours. That's how they're looking at it.
Per FTA regulations, you only have 2 hours to collect a breath sample. Someone wants you to. So we discovered somebody smelled like alcohol at 4 AM, we would have to wait till 7 or 8 AM minimum to just get them over there.
So. Understanding that we're a rural serving agency, knowing that there are. Other agencies that serve. Populations and areas that have even less access than what we currently have. What do other agencies do do they do what we are suggesting now, specifically with having staff become certified in this, and that's.
Most of them don't do it, but most of them have never been audited by the FTA specifically. Or it's generally during the triennial audience that they say, hey, you need to find somebody that fills all of your service hours, and every year we always look for new providers that will do it, but there is never any. About 10 years ago, we had something that we could call and they would respond to our scene or respond to our business. And of course, they would charge $500 per call, but if we had to use them, we could. Now, there's not even those services available in Northern Arizona. So a lot of times, especially when it comes to providing drug and alcohol testing during their service hours, people just don't do it.
And let's see, we have Jack with a question online.
Yeah, I just like to offer that, NAU and Mountain Line has some intergovernment agreements in place, and we are in the same boat that you are. So it would be interesting to have a conversation with our team here with the shuttle program to see how we could collaborate on this issue, because we're, like I said, we have the same exact issue. So there might be something that we could do to offset this burden on both of us, or help with this burden on both of us. So please feel free to reach out to me and we can get a conversation scheduled if that interests you.
Absolutely, thank you very much. We will definitely reach out.
Thank you.
Jen, I have a question.
Sam, given how small our team is, I'm just wondering your time commitment and what that will look like now that you're going to be the one, you and another person doing the
Many
test.
years ago, myself and Heather became certified, but we let it lapse because we weren't actually doing those types of things anymore. But the initial investment is approximately $1,000 per person and about a week's worth of time. After you become certified, I would say probably 8 hours every quarter.
And that's for doing the tests and
That's for doing the test, upkeep of the machinery that takes the breath samples, things of that nature.
there any other questions? Seeing none? How much time?
Thank you very much.
Back to Ann Dunno for item number 13, downtown Convention Center update.
Good morning, Dan. I don't have any. No action, but just giving the board an update on downtown connection center. So a little background, you've seen this map in the past. This was our phasing map that was approved by the city as part of our zoning process back in 2022. It identified our phases for the downtown connection center. Phase 1, building is complete. Phase 2, the kind of center portion is the operations. And the civic space, those are phase 2. Phase 3 was always identified as a future phase by the city for parking. So everyone's aware, we've got some construction happening again, and it's related to getting ready for the Rio de Flight project. So what you're seeing right now out in the field and the blocking of Phoenix Avenue portions of is our first step 1, which is in order to be ready for the Rio, Mountain Line will need to develop an interim operations hub. I call it the pizza because it kind of looks like a triangle, where we're going to push all of our operations into kind of a split framework with some bus parking on the south side of Phoenix and up in the north area around where the artwork is outside right now. We would be in that condition, once the Rio starts, and we have to be out of their way because just to the right, the swooping line, that's the Rio de Flag. Right now, what we're doing is, in order to get into that position, there are power lines in the way, and power poles will need to drive in the future for that interim condition. So we are undergrounding all of that APS line, public electric lines. That is not a sunk cost because ultimately when we construct the operation specific space, we need to underground those utilities anyway. So that is good news. So we are taking a little bite out of our ultimate condition right now by doing some of this not so fun work on Phoenix Avenue. And we call that the 2A interim operations hub. This is a little snapshot of what we are also working on design of the ultimate condition. Even though we know we may not be constructing until about 2030 or a little after, we are kind of plugging away at developing the operations hub, which we had that layout, that very pretty picture back in 2022, but as we're getting really looking at engineering and the challenges, working around the Rio and the culvert and some other utilities, really honing in on the nuts and bolts of the layout of the operations hub and the canopy development. And so this little snapshot is a 15% plan. You can kind of see the blue is kind of the endeavoring to cover buses with canopies. Because we have to straddle the Rio, we're gonna have to kind of narrow up some of our canopies to make it more of a walkway. Everything has to be removable if the Rio would need to get in and repair their infrastructure. So there's kind of a lot going on behind the scenes with the design. Really our next steps is we're really kind of informally working with city staff who will be diving in and getting technical feedback from the city technical stakeholders, public works, utilities, planning. So we're going to be working with them over the next months to kind of just bring this design up to 60% by the end of the year. And really, we're going to just sit on design because we don't have a timeline for the Rio. And once we do have a timeline for the Rio, we would pick up the design again, 2028, 2029, whatever that timeframe looks like. Because things can change and then we can have not gone so far in design that we can't make some adjustments. So a little bit about the potential for charging. The future operations hub, we are only planning 2 overhead charging stations. Mountain Line made a strategic decision not to keep considering inductive charging, kind of that platform where it sits over the concrete and gets charged. There's just too many things to incorporate. The technology is not fully baked yet. There are a few transit agencies using it, but there's some standards with it that haven't been formally approved by various electric boards. So, and it also just makes it complicated for the buses. When you build a bus, you have to add yet another type of charging. It just really complicates that. So, and we've already invested in our CASPAR infrastructure with the pantograph. So with that, that gives enough information to our design team. We're gonna plan for two locations. One would probably be on the just to the right of the on the north side of the island where that big bus is in the middle, and the other would be kind of down into the lower left, but they'll TBD. So there's just a lot of things to move around and be aware of. Obviously, there's a sewer line. We will be talking to city staff about considering, currently their standards are not to allow structures over their sewer lines. We are going to ask us, we're gonna have a conversation to see if we can work something out, because that would really inhibit us with our bus canopies if we have to also work around the sewer line. So more to come on that. The other part of phase 2B, the ultimate, is developing the civic space. And last spring, city council adopted what we call the bubble diagram for the civic space, which is this, it's a really, cool vision to create, more public art, some landscaping, a splash pad, a restroom. This is a partnership project related to this phase, this part of the phase with the city. They would cover the capital and then they would, for the related items for the city, for the splash pad and the restroom in the public art, for example. And then Mountain Lines grant can cover kind of the, access to transit, kind of the hardscape, types of components, with the civic space. So where we left from last year's adoption from city council, kind of been working with, community, investment and pros, the Parks and Rec, team leaders, to kind of, well, frankly, it hasn't been a huge priority on anyone's radar because it's far off. We've gotten the stakeholders together. We're gonna have a workshop here at the end of the month to take this plan and really dive in and move towards 60%. And so our goal is to, by the end of the year, to true up this to 60% plan, same thing with the operations hub, because they really, the design itself has to kind of be coordinated. So that's really our goal by the end of the year. And with that, that completes my update. If anyone has questions.
Question for staff? I've got a question regarding your last slide on the civic space. I know that you're moving into design. It's okay. So I know that you're moving in to design in December 26th. What would be the timeline currently on any sort of, I know that it's sort of up in the air for funding and all kinds of different things, but what would be ideal
For this,
for the civic space portion, the phase 2B? What you have up there?
the timeline and construct, or, it's after the Rio, just like our operations hub. And right now, our understanding with the Rio is they are waiting on. They've applied for additional funding for the project with the Army Corps of that process, and they will know if they receive this funding roughly in June of this year. If they do, they will award a contract to a Army Corps construction contractor that would start work in 2027, at least in the area of Phoenix Avenue, and then that whole portion more south down Mike's Pike and out Butler, kind of that area. They would award a contract, and that contractor would be in this area for about 3 years, they estimate, 2027 to 2030-ish. Pretty much that's the timeline, 2020, 2030-ish is when, between the operations hub and the civic space, I mean, if everything comes together, we could. Basically, they would finish their work, they wouldn't have to put back the parking lot, we would just move right in, we'd be in our pizza location as an operations hub. We would then just do the construction of everything, at that time.
There's a lot of things that have to follow.
There is a lot of things that have to follow this, yes.
We might, none of us might.
Yes.
I would say best case scenario, we're in the operations center in 2032. You can just predict worst case scenario. I what I heard, the same conversation that Anne's referencing, is that they will still need to lay down material in this same space to do work on Mike's Pike after they do underneath our bus transfer center. So potentially the civic space even follows Mike's Pike. So even if we're in the transit center by 2032, we've been very cautious about committing to any timeline on the civic space. I think our goal was to complete the design of the civic space to lock in some decisions. There will probably need to be down the road some adjustments as we get to the 100% design, but I think the civic space is probably we'll say after 2032.
Yeah, the contractor, the Army Corps contractor, not only would they obviously have to complete the Y that's on the Phoenix Avenue property. To Heather's comment, they need to keep access for laydown because they have to come back and access south of the just north of our boundary here, right by the tracks, between the tracks, they have to be able to get to that area to connect under the tunnel to make the underpass and to complete that connection to the north. So that's where it's really logistically challenging for construction.
Yeah, my question was really to that point, right? I mean, we've been talking about Rio since most of us have been here, so. So I appreciate the sort of outlook, 15, 20 year, whatever it is. So thank you.
Yeah.
On to item 14, Lizzie Collins, the operational assessment 5-year plan update.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the board. Next slide. Thanks, Rhonda. Next slide even. Really excited to present just an overview of the timeline and the scope of work on this operational assessment and 5-year transit plan update. We released a request for proposals last fall. We did receive 8 proposals. We were really excited about that. Really great teams coming together. It was a very hard decision. However, the selection committee did recommend Transpo Group for the contract award, and we kicked off the project with them in January. And we've asked them to analyze and make recommendations on known service performance and gaps shown on the slide here. We, so really like focusing in on the service we're providing today and also the known conditions across our community. And then we really want to clarify how Prop 488 service enhancements should be phased in most efficiently with all of the other challenges and gaps in the system. So looking holistically across our current and future services to just most efficiently provide service. And that also includes our cost sharing and past programs. So really cost sharing on our Mountain Express program and then past programs in our Eco Pass program with residential housing, with employers, et cetera. So really excited to have this project in place. There's so many things internally that we're like, oh gosh, we need the operational assessment to be completed. We need all of this to give us some answers. So it's just wonderful to be in the thick of it right now in the analysis phase, exploring all of these elements of the scope of work. Next slide, please, Rhonda. This will be our timeline of the operational assessment. So we anticipate the analysis phase to be completed in August and bringing that to the board at that time to discuss outcomes of it. In October, we should have short-term, so 6 to 12 month recommendations for Mountain Line service. Again, bringing, all of these milestones are coming to the board in addition to anything else coming up. And then in January, we should have the final recommendations that we can then bring to the board for service planning, service changes and public comment, et cetera. So it's just a really good timeline to work into our regular service change program. And then throughout 2027, we'll move into that more years 2 to 5 and create a detailed phased growth plan for our 5-year transit plan and really deep dive on operational costs, how much staff do we need to implement all of these things. I talked about phased growth. Maybe it starts year 1 of a service enhancement. It looks like a microtransit or maybe a taxi program partnership, and years 2 through 5 maybe we beef that up, you know, maybe we are monitoring it, it's not looking successful, maybe that changes. So just a lot of great outlines and ways to pivot in that 5-year plan for all of our service enhancements and growth over the next 5 years. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And throughout this project, we really wanted to focus on frequent transit means success for our community. You know, we want to make transit the easy choice for people to ride it to work, to school, home, again, shopping, all of the places that they need to go. And that means having transit along our main corridors where people need to be. So that does, you know, we on the previous, or rather the first slide, we talked about service gaps, areas that we're not currently providing service. So how do we make sure that we're getting to where people need to go now and into the future? And so I wanted to show this. I'm so excited about our August service changes that Jackie presented. And so on the screen here is a chart. The dashed lines are what we're currently providing today. We're at 44% access to 20-minute transit service or better, both to jobs and to populations, the general population. Which is interesting, they both match 44, but our service enhancements will bring that up to 59 and 54%, as you can see on the screen here. That's 20-minute service, and then even more for just any transit service, you know, greater or less frequent than 20 minutes. And then you can kind of see the populations broken out on the last 3 lines there. So really making sure that we're targeting, you know, the people who will use transit the most, and that need transit the most, and getting them to where their destinations are. So really excited to see see that success metric already in place this August, just moving that needle towards success. That's all I have on this operational assessment. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions for Busy?
I just have one clarification.
Sure thing.
Transpo is our contractor on this project. I think it's really important to acknowledge that they are not Transpro, which is a different contractor. I just want to make sure you all caught that, that difference. Transpo does this type of work. Transpro does the HR consulting work, and so just want to make sure you all caught that there was a distinguishment between those 2 contractors and their expertise and skill sets. Thanks, Busy.
Appreciate that clarification. Any other questions? Comments? All right. On to item number 15.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So Mountain Express wrapped up. Let's see, I think March 30th was our last Sunday of service. So here's our overview this last season. A few changes over previous Mountain Express seasons. As discussed in the September board meeting, we added weekends in March. We were really hopeful for the snow, but I think we all know it didn't quite show up. It showed up sometimes, but not quite in the volume that we were hoping. We increased service from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. I'm really excited to show you the results of that in future slides here. And Mountain Line also contributed this year. This was a one-time only contribution, again, that the board, you know, reviewed. We had a discussion about. It was taken from our advertising revenue, which is our only kind of available revenue source that could be tapped for this pilot service change and enhancement. So Mountain Line paid 37% of the costs of the service, and then we also conducted a rider survey, and I'll describe those results later in the presentation. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And as with other frequency increases across our Mountain Line system, ridership did increase as a result. So, you know, we had very similar schedules. So in December, we go every day from December 26th until FUSD returns to school. And then weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, January and February, that's always kind of been the tempo. So nothing else has really changed, you know, between seasons. We did, you know, we're promoting a lot the same. We tried to increase that and, you know, increase our outreach some more. So that could be an additional change that improved our ridership, but again, we just see this throughout our system. When we increase frequency, we are seeing increased ridership as a result. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So as I mentioned, the snow shown in the yellow line here didn't quite show up, and ridership's the blue bars. However, we did see a 41% increase in ridership over last year, which is great. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And the goal of Mountain Express since its inception in 2015 was to reduce congestion on US 180, and it continued to achieve that goal, reducing over 100 cars from the road each day of service and its associated emissions. Next slide, please. And here are the results. I have all of the questions, all the results in your packet. You're welcome to explore. Let me know if you have other questions later. We will be looking at this in the operational assessment in more detail. I just kind of want to give you a few teasers that were pretty interesting to staff here. So, first question in the survey. Oh, first I want to point out participation was only 69 individuals. Definitely not statistically valid, but it gives us a lot of information just on rider preferences, sentiment, etc. So the reason behind that, we did incentivize the participation of the survey with a 2026-2027 season power pass that Snowball provided free. So no transaction there. That was a voluntary donation from Snowball, which is very appreciated. So we publicized this raffle to get people to take surveys. However, to prevent fraud, for people contributing their email to the raffle, we really tried to limit when and where we were promoting the survey. So it's not our typical promotion of public surveys. We had some staff promote it in person at the Flag High Park and Ride for a couple of days in the service. We had some little note cards in the Mountain Express bus only. But maybe a little hard to see. It wasn't like a big poster because we didn't want to put the big overhead posters in the buses in and out just for the weekend service. So it was a little challenging all around, but again, the results are very telling. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And on that last slide, sorry, the rider survey showed 61%. Sorry, Rhonda, would you go back one slide? The rider survey showed 61% of survey respondents were taking their first ride on Mountain Express, so that big blue chunk on the right. With the remaining have taken Mountain Express in the past, so great to see riders from the past and newcomers. Now next slide, please, Rhonda, thanks. Overall satisfaction with services from our survey respondents. And then some of the things that we got lower scores on, so the blue dashes on the right there were our lower scores. We do have some solutions for that on-time performance. We have a set timetable. However, as you all know, the traffic on 180 really could be 15 minutes. It could be very, very quick, and it could be very, very long. So it's really, maybe not having a timetable, just saying every 20 minutes, check the real-time app or something like that, instead of having a bus kind of come back to the DCC, sometimes having to wait for a bit of time for the published departure of at the DCC. So we have some approaches to mitigate some of these like lower scores on responses. We also had we did resolve some challenges that we had early in the season, publishing our real-time arrival app lower on the list in this slide. And so that definitely impacted the score, just not having Mountain Express showing up on our real-time app immediately, and that's how we really want people to use that app. And when they don't see their route, it was like, oh no, scrambling. But it wasn't on Mountain Line side. I'm relieved to say. It was on our contractor side. And so just getting that, all of the dots connected and testing it out. So again, we have some mitigation moving forward. And next slide, please, Rhonda. This will be the last of the survey results, but again, they are all in your packet. Overall, majority of people want to see possible service enhancements. They would love the bus to come more often. More, throughout the weekdays. Again, I said we only provided weekday service during the Christmas break, December 26th until FUSD went back to school in early January. Otherwise, it was just Saturday, Sunday. Snowball has their demand pricing model in place. So it's, much cheaper tickets, maybe during the weekdays. And so there's more demand there, and people would love to have the bus during that time. So understandably. So again, you can see all the results here. The only thing people did not want to see change is the free service. So any fare increases were overwhelmingly not liked, but it was all just possibilities. We really wanted to explore rider sentiment, what service could look like. Next slide, please. And so all of this data really contributes into the operational assessment, identifying what the future service of Mountain Express may look like. All of that will be coming back to the board. We've had great partnership with Snowball. They've been wonderful participating in this process, great conversations on the operational assessment on what future looks like. So, just really excited to see what comes out of that for recommendations. We'll continue analyzing survey results and develop funding strategies for board recommendation as well. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Thanks, Nikki.
One more just real quick. This is coming back to us to discuss further for next year.
Busy, can you remind us, when do we come back to talk about the OA's results for Mountain Express specifically?
I want to say it's June that we have penciled in.
Question. Yes, we're going to answer that question about what does Mountain Express look like under Mountain Line's operation as a public transit service? How might it be funded? For us to talk, we need to have that conversation before we can start contract negotiations with Arizona State.
Come in.
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for this presentation. And I want to start by saying that I'm just an alternate attendee for the board, so if this has been covered before, please excuse my raising the comment. And I want to also acknowledge that Mountain Line is a very complex operation with multiple funding sources. And services are largely, or to a major extent, funded by FUSD, contributing for public school students. NAU provides funding support. Obviously, Arizona Snowball is doing a heavy lift on this Mountain Express service. But my comment is regarding the optics of the fare structure. And the optics for our community is that Mountain Express is fare free. NAU students and public school students on the surface of it have free transportation and getting that their agencies are funding the service. But for the common man and common woman riding Mountain Line, they still pay the fare. So I just encourage staff and the board to keep in mind the optics of this, and I know everybody is working toward fare free as soon as it can become a reality within the budget constraints. But the optics and acceptance of Mountain Line services by our community, I think, is influenced by the optics of our fare structures. Thanks for hearing my comment.
I got it.
Thank you. First off, thank you for the presentation. The question I had, just so you can share with the public and with the members here, is just how much did Snowball have to pay for this service, and how much did we subsidize in that? Because it was a one-time subsidy that we paid in order to make this fare free and to increase ridership, or not ridership, frequency this year compared to previous years.
Thank you. I'd like to take the question, Busy, if that's okay with you, because I'd like to answer both kind of questions. I think it's really important to point out that the complexity of our relationships oftentimes is another business paying those fares on behalf of the riders. So for example, our agreement with Arizona Snowball as the really the funder of Mountain Express is that they pay 100% of the operating cost. And that's why there is no fare for those passengers. Mountain Line is a service operation, we use the operating funds from our fares to pay for how we operate our services, and that's just a difference between routes 2 through 9 inside the city and Mountain Express. So I'm gonna swap over and then I'm gonna come back and talk about NAU and FUSD. Mountain Express this year is the first time that Arizona Snowball has not paid 100% of the operating cost of that program or route. This year, we wanted to demonstrate as the public transit provider, how moving to 20-minute frequency for ease, changes behavior in choosing transit over a car. The increase in ridership. Busy, can you go back to the slide that had snow versus ridership? Because I wanna point to something I found very interesting. If you look, the 2025-26 season on that yellow line has some of the lowest snowfall across the years we provided it, but relatively much higher ridership than seasons with greater snowfall. And that is what we assumed would happen. That's what we as transit providers thought would be the tie. That's why the board of directors said, yes, let's put $70,000 of advertising revenue, not City of Flagstaff money, Mountain Line advertising revenue, into increasing frequency to demonstrate what we thought was a theory. What it was a theory at the beginning of the season. So that's that. So it's the season, Busy, the season cost 200-some thousand.
Yes, 214,000 total.
So we paid 77,000 in already collected advertising revenue from the fund balance of advertising revenue. Arizona Snowball paid the remainder for operation this fiscal year. In prior years, they paid 100%.
But just to be clear, the amount that Arizona Snowball paid this year compared to last year was the same.
It was the same, that
We
is
just
correct.
covered the difference to increase frequency.
We made that decision, yes, that for this season, and it was a one-time in the hopes of demonstrating while we did the operational assessment to look at how Mountain Express operates and what should its future look like, both from a frequency as well as funding sources. And then to council member Spence's point, and for our public here, NAU, the students on NAU have free access to the single route on campus. They are subject to a fare collection to all other routes. And that was part of our operational agreement, is that NAU pays for those students so they don't have to pay a fare on campus. So just wanted to clarify that. And then, yes, FUSD students, while a parent doesn't feel the burden of that pass cost for FUSD, the school district is buying those passes. So I just wanted to clarify, I understand the optics around how one group or another may be viewed as having fare free, but Mountain Line only allows for any group to utilize our system, quote, without a fare if someone else has already compensated us for that. So just felt like it was fair to respond to your remarks. And I hope I addressed your question. Great. Thanks, Busy.
Thank you. If there are no further comments or questions. Appreciate it. On to item number 16. Last one, anniversaries.
Right, so for those of you maybe seeing this for the first time, we've reordered a few things on the agenda, trying to respect everyone's time. So milestone anniversaries were moved from the beginning of the meeting to the end of the meeting, not out of how important they are to recognize, but just to ensure that business that requires action of this board is prioritized. So here we are sharing April milestone anniversaries. We have two. Brian Tursky started with us as a mechanic a year ago, and Debbie Zeller started as our HR generalist a year ago. Both have been contributors to our last year's success, and I'm happy to celebrate their first anniversaries. If you'd like, I can roll right into current events. Perfect. Couple other April anniversaries to share with you. We had 3 others. Ken Lesensky is on the left-hand side of the screen. Ken's played a lot of different roles here at Mountain Line, but we're happy to celebrate his 12 years. He recently returned to being a full-time transit operator, and he's probably the happiest man on staff these days. He said the ability to drive a bus and go home at the end of the day is fantastic. Jordan Goodwin is our mechanic assistant. We collaborated with Quality Connections to make the hire of Jordan. He works anywhere from 15 to 28 hours a week, and details a lot of our buses, but has also shadowed our mechanics on some minor maintenance. Jordan can tell you the age and miles of every bus in our fleet. One of our happiest employees, Christian Blair, is celebrating his 2nd anniversary at Mountain Line. Christian started with us, we hired him as a transit operator. He'd had his driver's license for roughly 2 months at the time that we hired him. When he went down to get his CDL permit, DOT said, you have to have your license for a year. So Christian was our first transit ambassador. So we gave him the opportunity to stay with us. He did the platform work, he helped passengers at the connection center, and he did such a great job at that. Before moving on to operator, we now have 3 transit ambassadors as part of our permanent employment program. They're out on the buses, they're on the platform. But Christian has now finished his 1st year as a CDL operator, his 2nd year with Mountain Line, and continues to do a great job. If you drove to Mountain Line today, or if you walked into the building, you may have noticed there's a little activity next door in the parking lot. So I wanted to let you know, this is all part of the project that Ann described, some things that we're working on. So the traffic controls that you see along Phoenix Avenue, they're actually in place 24/7 till about mid-June. This is creating for us some flow issues, getting in and out of our parking lot, etc. So we've developed what you can see on the map and what you can see if you look outside, a modified transit center. So we have to move out of Phoenix Avenue and into the parking lot, in addition to making space for our contractor to lay down equipment and materials needed for that project. So some things that we're working on since we moved in on Monday, we've increased lighting, so the pedestrians that are in that far north lane, identified as routes 4 and 5, have lighted access in that area of the parking lot, because there's no street lights in that area. We're also looking at painting a crosswalk so that they have a safe pedestrian access closest to the building from that north side to those bus lanes on the south side. Overall, we will be shifting several times this diagram, but I wanted to demonstrate to you that our team is very attentive to the safety and the communication with our customers. We've done several media pushes, and our platform attendants are regularly out there helping direct people to the location of their bus. Secondary to that, Mountain Line is working with one of our neighbors. So our project that's happening on Phoenix Avenue and Mike's Pike to underground the electrical infrastructure is impacting a business. When the project shifts to work on Mike's Pike later this spring and early summer, it will make Pizza Coletta, which is the business between the 2 red boxes here, outdoor seating inaccessible. And we will be removing a canopy that's on the outside of that building for roughly 5 to 6 weeks. We recognize the impact of this construction on a small business during a busy season. And so really wanted to be good neighbors while assisting Mountain Line, Lovin, who's our contractor, to comply with city codes, as well as assisting Pizza Coletta in meeting those code requirements. So there's 2 issues related to this that we're attempting to address. One is the inaccessibility of their outdoor seating during high tourist season. Additionally, the canopy that we're removing cannot be reinstalled by city code. So we're trying to be good neighbors, and we are working with them right now to apply for parklets in the lower box, right? Or is it in both? In both the red boxes. Sorry, I should have asked that beforehand. Parklets would allow them to do what is being done downtown at Pay and Take.
And we, to be clear, we are not applying for any.
Sorry, we are not applying. we are requiring, the business has to be the applicant, the business has to hire the contract according to our attorneys for liability purposes, thank you, Scott. But we want to help them by compensating for the need to do this. And so we wanted to make you aware of, it is a cost to our project, it is a cost to the business that we cooperate with in this community and neighborhood. And I wanted to make you aware of it now on the front end, and we'll continue to provide you updates. Again, we're not hiring anyone to do the work. Jackie, we are not applying for the permits, but we're working with Pizza Coletta to facilitate the work and help offset the cost of their need to do this while we are constructing. Any questions for me on that? I know I butchered this. Two other things that sorry I didn't put any photos in the slides. If you have not been down Casper Avenue recently, I encourage you to go take a look. The Bob Sellers Toyota garage is gone, it no longer exists. And we are moving ahead quickly with our new Caspar maintenance facility. So thank you all for your support of that. And we're very excited. We had, quote, celebration of ceremonial dirt and gold shovels with our staff and sledgehammers yesterday. And I should have put those pictures in here and I apologize, but we will circulate them. We also have moved a tenant in. So if you all remember, we have a space here in the lobby of our building. Downtown Business Group has moved in. They are currently paying us a fair market rate for occupation of that space. So Hunter, I'm gonna get his last name wrong. Give me a second. Abert. Abear. I see it in my head. Abear and his team have moved in. The long-term plan is that we are coming up with a exchange of services lease agreement. So in exchange for them occupying this space, they are going to be working with us on maintenance of our shelters in the downtown area, ambassadors for transit programs in the downtown area. And probably the biggest one is getting the restrooms on the exterior of this building opened to the public. So we're very excited about that relationship, but we're glad to have them in the building and get a little revenue in for transit in the meantime. Two quick travel and training reports. Jackie and myself attended the Southwest Transit Association Conference, March 30th through April 2nd. As a reminder, I do sit on the board of directors as the treasurer and the incoming vice chair. We had 2 board meetings at that conference. We also met with the Federal Transit Administration, as mentioned earlier in this meeting. At the conference, Jackie and I were able to take advantage of sessions on education and employment, the transit partnerships that facilitate those, AI adoption in the transit sector, training and coaching to improve safety, and federal regulatory changes. Additionally, I was able to present on Mountain Line Metro Plan's Creative Local Match Plan with the Northern Arizona Council of Governments. And I represented the Arizona Transit Association, both in a session on the value of transit associations and providing an Arizona update to the full membership. The following week, April 6th through April 8th, there were a group of us that actually attended the Arizona Transit Association. There was a board meeting there that I did participate in, and then we were able to present retirement remarks. So Becky Miller, the executive director of ASTA, is retiring after about 15 years of service. And so we were able to present remarks. We met with our regional administrator and deputy regional administrator. That is where we discussed the drawdown issue and how to resolve it. Additionally, we participated in sessions on ADOT training, which is important to our finance team, pathway to leadership and play engagement, mentorship programs, etc. And then at this conference, I did also present on 3 panels: a legislative update, statewide opportunities for funding transit, and a fare-free look at 3 systems. So that panel included ourselves, Kansas City, and Missoula, Montana. 3 different ways that fare-free can be. Couple of reminders. We did confirm, you'll get an invite soon, executive session that one of the many doodle polls that went around. The executive session is confirmed April 29th from 2 to 4 p.m. We do have all 5 members present. The May 21st meeting has been changed to 8 to 12. We are pending 1 member's response, but as we have quorum, we do intend to have that meeting on that date. Additionally, a quick staffing update, we have 2 in-person interviews for the Deputy General Manager of Operations position, both on site here in Flagstaff. One candidate is from Transit Operations in Arizona. One candidate is from out of state, having worked both in King County, which is in Seattle, as well as Missoula, Montana. We are again revisiting the hire of the planning director, and then we have several pending recruitments post that if you'd like additional information. And then the last item, this is moving from current events, so the last item on our agenda, which is items to and from the board of directors or staff. Some things I've noted from today's meeting is follow up on fare free discussion. We had already included that in the drafted main agenda, but based on public comment today, I will offer some additional remarks and comments. If that's okay with you. And I wrote something else down and I don't remember what it is. But maybe if you have comments for me, I can make sure we get them noted and get them agendized at a future meeting.
Anything for Heather? Saying that.
And the other one was the financial fundamentals. So we'll be covering that at the meeting as well. Everything that I have.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For the to from, do you want us, so I do have something that I'm going to Phoenix on Monday and it relates to.
Perfect. Yes,
This is where I'm going, okay?
Yes.
Just to let everyone know, I'm heading down with Kate Morley from Metro Plan on Monday. I will be attending the RTAC meeting and I'm meeting with the governor's transportation staff and advocating for the Arizona Smart Fund and the West 66 appropriation. And I think we're meeting with a few other folks as well. It should be a very long and hopefully productive and good day. I'm gonna make sure you all that.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see question marks on either side of the. A few question marks.
We are confirmed, May 21st, 8 AM to 12 PM, and if that should change between now and then, as a result of the executive session that we just talked about happening on April 29th, we will be sharing these meeting advice that we will do.
Thank you for that. And then future items.
So here's a brief look at the May meeting. So we will in May be talking about the procurement resolution. I know that's come up several times, so we'll be looking at the history of the resolution and what we want to do. We will have a couple procurements that have been added as a result of that resolution being suspended. We'll have the fare collection and another one recently got added that I'm blank on in this exact moment. Sorry. We'll have the adoption of the roles and expectations for the CEO and board of directors as we have been discussing. And then Megan and I will share the financial plan review, the final budget presentation, which is to really look at all the revenues, to cover all the expenses we've been presenting on, and I'll look at fare free. We will have an update on the bus stop program, the operational assessment, and delegation of authority. So again, as a result of the procurement resolution being suspended, we've moved the progress report into a discussion item so that we can highlight anything that's put on there. Procurement won't be on there, but there are some instances where prior procurements approved under that resolution. We want to be sure you're understanding actions we're taking on them. So for example, we have a bus stop notice to proceed coming up. And then we'll have a progress report on workforce utilization and then our standing normal items of milestones and contents.
So for clarification, the fare free item is for discussion only?
It is for discussion only. It was what we agreed to put on the agenda every May when we look at our fund balance and what's possible and whether or not there is room to rediscuss fare free, and then it would come back to the board for additional decisions.
Thank you. All right. With that, we are adjourned.
Looks like.